Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Beyond Numbers Fellowship event for today. My name is Charlie. Just a quick bit of introduction. I work at Allianz, a little insurer. I do the general insurance part, and I'm here as the MC for today's event, where we will be exploring this topic on the future of humanity. Who are we? If you're brought here by a friend and you don't know who we are, the Beyond Numbers Fellowship is a collection of professionals who work in roughly the numbery industry. We work in things like insurance, banking, finance, super, and we come together to help people explore some of the deeper questions, to answer some of the things they haven't thought about. And everyone's free to come along as long as you have an open mind and are curious about those bigger questions. And today I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker, David Robertson. And to kick things off, let's have a quick little interview, should we?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
First of all, tell us about yourself. I hear you've got a bit of an accent. Where does that come from?
Well, I don't have an accent, as you can tell, whereas you, Charlie, do have an accent. And can I say to the folks online, I apologize for, I hate looking at myself in a screen, so who knows what you guys, poor guys, have to go through. I'm from Scotland, and I was a Presbyterian minister there for about 33 years, and came to Australia 3 years ago.
Cool. So you've already spoken with us a couple of months ago on the what was it? It was on humanity as well. It was what it means to be human.
What it means to be human.
And today we're exploring the future of humanity. What made you choose this topic?
Well, first of all, we're all human. I'm assuming that at least all of you identify as human, though you never know nowadays. Sometimes people. I was just reading a story of a woman who's identifying as a wolf at the moment. But we are human, and we obviously all have an interest in what happens with humanity. We're all part of the human race. And I'm interested in a guy called Yuval Noah Harari, who is a very influential writer. He's not writing from a Christian perspective, but he wrote these two books, Sapiens and Cur Deus Homo. And last time we looked at Sapiens, this time we're going to look at Cur Deus Homo. Okay. And I hope it will be interesting for all of you who are watching.
Cool. Thank you, David. So before we kick off, I just want to remind everyone that there'll be a Q&A afterwards. So as you're listening to David speak, if there's any questions that pop up in your mind, we're going to put up a little number on the chat, I believe. And feel free to message it as the question comes up, and we'll try and get to it after the talk today. So let me read out a little passage from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 14 to 21, before handing it over to David for the talk. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 14 to 21. For Christ's love compels us, because we are convinced that one died for all, and therefore all died. And he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again. So from now on, we regard no one from a worldly point of view. Though we once regarded Christ in this way, we do so no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone, the new is here. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That God was reconciling the world to himself in Christ, not counting people's sins against them. And he has committed to us the message of reconciliation. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Thank you, David.
Yeah, I think that's it. Okay. Yeah, it's unusual for me to be talking to a screen. As I say, I hate talking to a screen, but there are people behind this screen, and I hope that most of what we do will be questions. The writer, philosopher, theologian Os Guinness says this: we humans are a unique life form on the earth. We are the only species that asks why. We are self-aware to a degree that no other animal appears to be, yet we know too that we're in a world that doesn't explain itself. So it's we are looking at some of the big issues here. But it is true. I grew up on a farm. And I've never seen cows have a prayer meeting, or pigs basically don't discuss the meaning of life, and but human beings do. And that itself, by the way, is a significant indication about the place of mind and thought in the universe. Now, this title, if you like pretentious Latin, Homo Deus, God becoming man, how will humanity evolve? Earlier, when I spoke to you, we looked at how we got to where we are. But this question is, how will we evolve? Is there still a future for us on planet Earth? How does this affect public policy? What about you as an individual? What hope is there? Will there be a new humanity? Yuval Noah Harari, he's an Israeli historian. He's kind of in guy for a lot of people. And his book, Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow, follows on from his book about humanity, Cur Deus Homo. He explores the impacts of major technological developments on human society, and he uses these past events to explain what's going on, what he thinks will happen in the millennium. He argues that throughout the history of humanity, we focused on suppressing three things: famine, disease, and war. I mean, ironically, at the end of the book, he quotes, let me just quote him exactly, "In the last few decades, we've managed to rein in famine, plague, and war." I think he wrote that in 2016. So, wow, yeah, well done, Harari. You've turned out to be a real prophet for the future. Famine, disease, and war. Well, I've just been reading of a famine in Somalia. Who knows what the next disease is going to be as COVID continues to go around. And as for the fact of getting rid of war, there has been the biggest war in Europe since the Second World War. He argues that we've managed to overcome famine and disease through the creation of vaccines, antibiotics, and other scientific discoveries. Ironically enough, he says that the development of nuclear weapons has given many countries the power to wipe out humanity, but that incentivizes nations to maintain peaceful relations and to avoid war at all costs. Well, again, that's what he says. It doesn't seem to be going too well. And on the basis of having defeated disease and famine and war, he suggests we need to develop a new human agenda. And he believes the focus will be on lengthening human lives, achieving true happiness, and creating genetically modified superhumans. Now, if you're looking at the screen, you're fully aware I am not one of these genetically modified superhumans. I guess if I was able to see you, I'd probably be able to say the same about you, no matter how many times you go to the gym. So he makes 10 points. So let me do them very briefly. Humans will become gods. Homo sapiens, wise humans, is evolving into Homo Deus, God humans, with godlike mastery over our environment and the ability to create and destroy life. For those of you who know history and those of you who know theology, you realize that this never turns out well. Secondly, he says, wellness and well-being will dominate. With problems of human survival, pandemics, famine, and violence solved, as I said, he was remarkably unprescient. Humans will increasingly focus on the godlike pursuits of chasing immortality, wellness, and enduring happiness, well-being. I think it's Google there was an offshoot firm from them, Calico, and they just have the modest ambition to solve the problem of immortality. Now, I'm not entirely convinced that I would want to live forever as a human being on this earth. Thirdly, he speaks of the rise of the useless class. And this is actually a very significant thing, because this is the kind of thinking that's occurring in much of our elites as they consider what to do in order to save the planet. The cost of upgrading the human condition will be expensive, says Harari, and reserved for a tiny elite. Meanwhile, the masses will see jobs disappear as they're replaced by ever more effective and ever more efficient technology. Unlike the lumpen proletariat of yesteryear, the new useless class will not be even able to sell their labor. So who knows? One day you may actually have AI that can give you a talk like this, so you don't need to bother with having someone like me. Fourthly, he talks about the death of humanism. Humanism is the dominant religion of the 21st century. It celebrates human intelligence, human experience, sensations, emotions, and thoughts, and human values. And he argues that humanism will be eroded by advances in science and technology. Specifically, the human sciences will challenge the human superiority and human exceptionalism that is implicit in humanism, including what he calls erroneous beliefs in the uniqueness of human sentience, feelings, human sapience, reasons, and free will. He says we're basically just animals with a God complex. Now, the implications of all this sounds a bit highfalutin, but the implications of all this for human democracy, human freedom, and human rights will be significant. The challenges to human politics, the idea that the voter knows best, or human economics, the customer is always right, or humanist aesthetics, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, humanist ethics, if it feels good, do it, and humanist education, think for yourself. There will be a lot of challenges in all of that. Now, I actually think that humanism without Christ, without God, fundamentally becomes anti-human. And I think that Harari is actually indicating that. The fifth thing that is of considerable interest for many people is what we call the rise of techno-humanism. In our pursuit of immortality and happiness, we turn to technology to upgrade ourselves through biological engineering, through cyborg bionic engineering, and through computer AI engineering. I was talking to someone coming in, one of you who's through in the room there, and you're an accountant and AI. I reckon there's probably going to be a job for you for a long time. I do a lot of work with lawyers. I don't know if I can ever envisage robots replacing lawyers. That would be an interesting thing. But if you're in accountancy, maybe you need to watch out. He then talks about Al sapiens beating human sentience. Now, what he means is we have an ability to feel and we have an ability to reason. Okay? But what if AI technology develops to such an extent that it's smarter and more intelligent than humans? Non-conscious but highly intelligent algorithms will know us better than we know ourselves. And we will increasingly rely on AI algorithms to inform and guide us in life, love, and work. Now, I personally hate algorithms. I don't like the fact that Facebook thinks that I need or want a Brazilian bride. I honestly haven't been looking at any of those websites, but Facebook has decided that is the case. Facebook has also determined what my politics are and sends me, to be quite frank, some links to groups that I don't want to be linked to. And yet, we're moving more and more in that direction. His seventh point, he says, I'm in love with your algorithms. Just as AI understands humans as sets of algorithms, in other words, algorithms are just formula. To predict and explain behavior, humans will follow suit. Individuals will no longer be seen as irreducible and indivisible selves, but as divisible individuals made up of constellations of if this, then that, style algorithms that code for personality, passions, and profile. And you think about, for example, if there was a dating agency. Now, I hate the idea of being seen just as a computer machine, which an algorithm can predict everything that I am going to do. I think there's much more to being human than that. And I think one of the ironies of our current society, which is supposed to have come out of a humanist view with a high view of humanity, is we're ending up with a very low view of humanity. He says that datism becomes the new religion. I like this, I did, or dataism. Some of you are very much involved in data. Data is, as someone has said, the new oil. You get people's data wherever you can. Sign up for this. We need your data. Reading a couple of books recently about Google and how they use data. Data is sold for advertising. Data counts for absolutely everything. Dataism celebrates life as data processing, individuals and organizations' algorithms, and the value of a human life in terms of its capacity to transform experience into data. In other words, again, we just become numbers. Then Harari goes on to talk about the Internet of all things. If you're of a particular age, perhaps, or I would suggest if you have good taste in films, think of The Matrix. That is, think of Matrix 1. If you're still with The Matrix at Matrix 3, then you have appallingly bad taste in films. But the Internet of All Things says basically this: if humankind is indeed a single data processing system, then our output will be the creation of a new and even more efficient data processing system called the Internet of All Things. Once that happens, there's no need for us anymore. Who'll need us? And so he finally talks about the end of humanity. The next step in evolution will ultimately see human beings transformed from semi-involved simians into pure information, and in doing so, breaking free from our carbon-based biological chains. Well, that's all incredibly cheery stuff, isn't it? Where do we go with all of this? Well, let me give you some quotes from Harari, and then just reflect on it a little bit more, and we'll have a Q&A. Very interesting. He cites Peter Thiel, the PayPal co-founder. The writing's on the wall: equality is out, immortality is in. We are moving towards Nietzsche's view of man and Superman, or nature and supernature, of the elite and the Untermenschen. He argues people are made happy by one thing, this is Harari, and one thing only: pleasant sensations in their bodies. Those of us who are here in the City Bible Forum office, we've had a pleasant sensation with some pizza. And there's a variety of pizza. We also find ourselves with, just think of numerous things you may do over this weekend, and a lot of it will be to provide pleasant sensations. However, I think to reduce humanity to a chemical reaction of a pleasant sensation is thoroughly demeaning. But on that basis, Harari argues that we need to re-enter humanity so that we can enjoy everlasting pleasure. Remember, pleasure. Well, again, if you know your literature, you'll know Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where the vast majority of the population are kept under control, in effect, by drugs and sex. He talks about non-organic beings, just neural networks. I mentioned that already. Now, again, I don't know if any of you have seen the Netflix series Black Mirror, but it's a kind of bizarre program, but it's trying to look at where technology will take us in the future. It's a drama series. And some of it, I think, has been quite prescient, and a lot of it is pretty depressing. He talks about God being dead. He denies that humans have eternal souls. He says our latest scientific discoveries flatly contradict this, except that's not true. They don't. They absolutely say nothing about it. Science deals with the material. It deals with the natural. If you are a naturalist, we're not talking about a scientist, a naturalist will say the only things that exist are material things, but that itself is a position of faith that you cannot prove except in a circular argument. He questions whether computers have no desires. He talks about potential virtual worlds in an infinite multiverse theory. I don't know. Do you feel that that's kind of hopeful, that in everything is chemistry, and in the future we will be disembodied, soulless computer programs? Do you really think that human beings, as Harari expects, will give up meaning for power? Are we just robots? Now, this is where I would come in and say that the biblical view of humanity is much more human. Human beings are biological, of course. We are emotional. We are sentient, of course. We feel things. We are creative. We are artistic. We are intelligent. We use language. But also, we are spiritual. We are made in the image of God. Now, given that God doesn't have a body, what does that mean? The image of God as being an old white man on a cloud in the sky is a ludicrous one, because it's against the very essence of what Christianity teaches, that God is a spirit. So when it says that we are made like him, it means that we are made spiritual beings, that we have knowledge, intellect, that we have morality, what the Bible will call righteousness, and that we have holiness, this sense of the ethereal and the beautiful. Rather than Harari's vision, I prefer looking at C.S. Lewis. He wrote a sci-fi trilogy, which was the last part of which was called That Hideous Strength, in which more than 70 years ago, he predicted what is now happening in this world and this attempt to make human beings just glorified robots. I want to argue for the humanity of human beings. I want to argue for the uniqueness of human beings. And I want to argue that there is purpose in life, that you are a whole lot more than the constituent parts of the chemicals within your body. And I want to say that meaning is found ultimately in the ultimate human being, the Son of God, Jesus Christ. Okay, I will leave it there.
Yep. Thank you so much, David. For the ones who are here in person, I believe the handouts have a phone number where you can text in question. For the ones at home, Yang's going to send out the phone number again for your questions. But in the meantime, I'm going to invite Martin and Ronnie. You guys can please unmute yourselves. I believe you're going to tell us a bit more about hope groups and what they are.
Thanks, Charlie. Hi, all. My name is Martin. It's great to see you all. As people working, I guess, in the numbers industry, one of the ways in which we support one another as we work mostly from home is by catching up during the midweek as a small group. So we call them a hope group. So I thought I'd invite Ronnie up, who's been part of this hope group, and ask him a few questions and how he's found it. So Ronnie, good to see you.
Hi, how you going?
Hey, good, thank you. Maybe could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where do you work and what do you do?
Yeah, so I work at Suncorp Insurance as a product portfolio manager. So, pretty close to the business and helping them stick to the strategy and goals.
Sure. And I don't know how long it's been. Maybe it's been a year and a half.
About a year and a half, yeah. Yeah, September, I think, last year.
And I haven't seen you in person for a couple of years now. But tell us a little bit about your experience with the Hope Group. I mean, why did you join the group in the first place? What was the motivation behind it? What do you enjoy about, being part of the Hope Group?
Yeah. I guess for me, my motivation to join the Hope Group was to reconnect with Christ and understand a bit more about the Bible. So a bit about me, that there's been gaps in my life where I've gone to church and learned about the Bible, and then long stints where I didn't. And it wasn't until, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago where I was going through some more challenging times in my life and really needed some guidance and hope. And I started going back to the church to reconnect with Christ. And during that time, it helped me find hope and strength to get through the challenging times. But more importantly, I guess it gave me a newfound motivation to be more open about my faith and share it with others and learn more from each other as well. And that's when I joined the Hope Group, where we do exactly that. We talk about our challenges, we talk about things that we're thankful about, and we read a story of hope and put some of that into practice as well. I guess if I could summarize, 3 things that I enjoy about being part of the Hope Group, and there's probably more than 3, but I thought I'd just stick it to 3, is firstly, it's an online gathering, so hence it's COVID safe, so we can blame pandemic for us not actually being able to meet face to face, but we get to meet other people online and share our stories, which is very refreshing. We do readings from the Bible, and then we discuss how we can apply that practically in our lives as well. And finally, it doesn't take a lot of time. It's 45 minutes every fortnight. I've got a pretty busy schedule, but taking a break to meet new people and sharing the gospel really helps reset myself during the day, during a busy day as well.
Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks for being honest and for sharing. Just to let you know, you don't have to be a person of faith in order to join our Hope Groups. We're open to people from any faith positions, as long as you're willing to explore what the Bible has to say about us. So feel free to sign up. There should be a link being sent in the chat room where you can sign up and share a little bit about what your preferences are. And we'll get in touch with you depending on your preference. And if you're joining us in person, there will be a form at your seat as well. So let us know. All right, back to you, Charlie.
Thank you, everyone. I've gotten quite a few questions already coming through.
Okay, let's go for it.
Okay, so first one, Christians have been behind many of the advances in science, technology, public health, welfare.
Yeah.
Should we now be wary of getting involved in human progress initiatives that might be used to perpetuate Harari's narrative?
Well, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it depends what you mean, even by the word progress. So splitting the atom can be progress. I don't know if Oppenheimer was a Christian or not, but you can use splitting the atom to provide energy, or you can use it to create a nuclear bomb. There are many, many things that we're involved in that are, how would I put it? They're neutral. You can use them for good or for evil. I think you're developing computer programs and so on. But there are other things I would look at and say, why would you want to do gain of function research into a virus? Why would you want to bring back a smallpox virus? Why would you want to invent viruses that are even more deadly to human beings? There are things just because we can do them doesn't mean we should do them. So I think it's like with everything else. It's like every other tool. It's what we use it for. I think Christians should be at the cutting edge of science, but I think science without morality ends up being deadly. And of course, Harari's view of humanity is, I think, fundamentally an unscientific one. I think it leaves out quite a lot of what is there. And the fact that he's been proven within just a few short years to be so spectacularly wrong should mean people shouldn't listen to him, but they still do because he sounds good, And people think we are going this route, but I'm sorry, I ain't ever marrying an emoji. Sorry, that's a terrible thing to say, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. There was actually a similar question that came in that says, is all technology progress bad because algorithm has helped people and some of the medical advancements help people?
Technological progress is brilliant. I mean, I'm sitting here and I have inside my body technological stuff because when I was seriously ill and you get incisional work done and things like this. No, technology is brilliant. I mean, we're doing this through technology, but it's how we use the technology. And it's what we're developing. If we're developing technology where we get to a stage where we say, we actually don't need human beings anymore apart from a super elite, that's bad.
Yeah.
So I would take a more biblical perspective in the sense of I would regard all human beings as valuable. Harari talks about those who have value, and he really talks about those who don't. And I think once you start doing that, I'm a historian, and I remember reading Wan Chang's biography of Chairman Mao, and at one point, one of Mao's deputies came in to see him and said, "Do you realize this famine could cost 300 million lives, Chinese lives?" And Mao just looked and said, "Is that all?" These were people who are utterly expendable for him. And I think the way Harari talks, there are people just expendable. And I think we're moving that direction in our society, and I think Christians need to resist that. So if I have the technology to develop a human baby in the womb that has two heads, should I do that? Of course not. So there are limits to what we do. But I'm not saying don't. See, what people do is they drive you to extremes. They either say you're some kind of Luddite, which means you're opposed to any advance, like the plow was a really bad thing, or they would say that anything technological must be good because it's progress, but it might not be progress. We might be building the Tower of Babel, which will cause us to collapse.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. I've got another one from someone who wants to take it a little step back. How can we be sure that human beings are made in God's image? Why should we believe just because the Bible says so?
Well, we shouldn't, at one level, believe just because the Bible says so, but we shouldn't disbelieve just because the Bible says so. I mean, we believe a lot of things in different ways. I think when I look at human history, when I look at human psychology, I think the Bible's explanation of who human beings are is the most intellectually fulfilling one. I think you do have an option. You can regard a human being as just a bunch of chemicals, or you can regard a human being as someone who's made in the image of God. And it just makes so much more sense to me to see a human being made in the image of God. I've been studying the Bible for about 40 years, and I haven't found basically anything wrong with it. And I think the Bible's view of humanity is far, far higher than Harari's. So the way I would say you can be sure is you need to look at it for yourself. And by the way, when we're answering this question, I go back to the Matrix. How can any of you be sure that this is really happening? How do you know that myself and Charlie aren't just algorithms that have been invented by the clever people at City Bible Forum who've all turned into brilliant technicians? Well, I think you could be fairly sure because nobody would be stupid enough to invent someone looking like me. Charlie would be okay, you know. But, you know, how can you be sure you're not in the Matrix? You know, how do you know that right now you're not dreaming? In fact, the one of the age-old questions of all is just simply how can you actually know that there are minds that exist other than your own? That's really hard. Basically, you can't prove anything. I used to argue that you can prove, I used to say you can't prove anything except 2 and 2 is 4, you know, basic mathematical formula. Until I was at a meeting, and this man came up to me afterwards and said, David, I'm a professor of mathematics. I said, oh no, please, you're not going to tell me that 2 and 2 is not 4. And he looked at me, actually, he said, in a binary system, 2 and 2 is 4, but in a non-binary system, I said, okay, forget it, you know, just anything. So, you know, our life has to have some meaning. There has to be some purpose, some direction, some truth, some reality. And I think it's a meaning that's more than machines. So it's a good question. Sorry, they're all good questions so far.
Yeah. No, I'm getting lots of
Anyone want to ask a rubbish question, please? I like rubbish questions. Go for it.
Okay, here, the next one is, in what ways does humanism with God differ to the one without?
Oh, because human beings are emotional beings, we're physical beings, we're relational beings, societal beings, if you like. And we are rational beings, but we're also spiritual beings. And if you leave the spiritual out, in effect, you are taking away the heart of humanity. So I would say that, ironically, humanism without Christianity. So for people like John Calvin, the 16th century French reformer, called himself a Christian humanist. And I think I would call myself that, in that I think the Christian teaching about humanity is what elevates humanity. So for example, just give me one example. In our current culture, everyone would be for equality. I mean, you're all watching, you're all for equality, aren't you? But on what basis? Because we're not equal. Some of us are more intelligent. Some of us can run quicker. You know, we all have different abilities. What is the basis of our equality? And to say it's just the fact that we're human is just to keep repeat. You know, again, it's a circular argument. But the Christian argument is that because all of us are made in the image of God, whether you're the drunk lying in the street, whether you're a disabled person, whether you're male or female, whatever race you are, whatever age you are, whatever ability you have, we're all made in the image of God equally. And that's the basis for equality. I don't think humanism has a basis for equality.
Right. Yeah. Just preemptively apologize. Quite a few questions have come through, but I don't think we'll have time to get through all of them.
I'll answer shorter. Let's
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I'll answer shorter. And if you think the answer is inadequate, which it almost certainly will be, please feel free to email me. The simple way to do it is ask.david@newchurches.org.au. But and we can continue the discussion. But we'll do these one quicker, okay?
Okay.
Let's try.
So the next question is, how should we encourage others when some of the trends like AI replacing their job will start to become a reality in the near future?
I think there are some AI jobs I'll be very, very glad to see replacing, for example, robots working in car factories. But I think we will never have human creativity. So we need to develop jobs that, I think human beings need to be able to work and to be creative and to provide. And so we need to look at ways of doing that. I look at some things, like I'm from a farming background, and from 100 years ago, where 20 people would be working on the farm I grew up on, it was down to 2 at the end. But there's actually a trend as we're moving towards more sustainable farming to use technology to its maximum, but also to use human aspects to a maximum. We are incredible machines, human beings, and there isn't a computer anywhere like our brain. So I mean, God designed us. We're more than computers, but we are absolutely the best computers in the world. So I would encourage people in that way.
Yeah. So Homo Deus seems like a really weak projection of the future.
Yeah.
Are there books that you recommend with a more realistic projections?
Yeah, I'm just working through the book of Revelation, so try go for that one. Yeah, I do think there are people who are wrestling. I mean, what you get is you get people like Doug Murray, you even get Jordan Peterson, you get a lot of current social commentators from left or right in political terms who identify the problems but don't see the future. Whereas I think that Christianity offers a great hope for the future. Right now, I think there's a hopelessness in our culture and society, and I see the hope for the future as being in Christ.
Yeah.
So I am actually being serious saying the Bible.
Is Harari's humanist tech characterization useful to our conversations in the community? So as people react and reject this depressing view of humans, they seek, well, what are we?
Yes, I think it is, because I think what Harari does is he takes common atheistic assumptions and takes them to their logical conclusion. And I always want to get people to say, okay, you believe this, where does this end up? Where does this end up? And then I want to offer them something that's better. So yes, I think it is useful.
Yeah. So we are running out of time. I think I actually got through most of the questions.
Good.
For anyone who has more questions, if you're here in person, feel free to stick around for a few minutes. We're right here. And for the ones who are home, feel free to email. Yeah. Email them through or join a Hope group to keep exploring the questions that you have in your mind. So for now, to wrap up, we were talking about the Hope groups, and we really want to encourage people to sign up for that if you want to continue the dialogue about about these deeper questions. I think Yang is gonna put a link into the chat now for how you can sign up. It's a little Google Doc. And if you're here in person, I think we have a physical handout as well where you can fill it in to sign up for our Hope groups and to connect in. And just want to keep you guys in the loop. We have one more event that's coming up for our end of year. We're going to do a little celebration. We've got a wonderful little panel lined up, and please pencil in Friday, the 2nd of December for another little event. Hope we can see you in person. And until then, more details will be coming out. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful time this afternoon. Have a wonderful weekend, and keep asking these deeper questions about life and everything behind us. So look forward to seeing you there. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.